It's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
And he is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. We are Red Eye Radio. Good morning. Taking a look at the breaking news overnight between Iran and Israel. The latest is an impact of an Iranian ballistic missile just east of Tel Aviv, damaged buildings and cars in nearly every direction around the blast area. The missile, which struck the location just east of Tel Aviv after 7 a.m. local time, shredded the facades of buildings and blew out windows in high-rise blocks. Debris from the explosion dangled from windows of several buildings, while falling wreckage damaged cars on the streets below and covered the entire area in shrapnel and dust. First responders closed off an intersection near the impact site as they began surveying the damage Thursday morning. The missile that struck was part of a barrage that saw missiles strike a hospital in southern Israel and at a hospital just south of Tel Aviv. Search and rescue teams were deployed to the different impact sites, said the emergency responder with the Israeli military. We send teams across the different hits. I came here because the density of this area and the potential casualty count, people that need extraction, was high in our estimation, and this was probably the highest damage in this round. Whoever stayed in the safe room was unhit. There was major damage to the apartments, but the safety rooms are complete and safe, and they save lives. The Iranian state media within the last hour says the target of the attack that damaged an Israeli hospital was a nearby technology park used by the military. This is after the accusations came in from Israel that you're committing war crimes because you're targeting civilian areas. Now, the thing is with the hospital, Israel's saying it was a direct hit.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. I'm watching, and the reason I can say that is because I'm watching so much. There are different videos that are coming out there of the Trey Yingst, by the way, with Fox News doing a good job. He is on the ground there near the hospital, showing the smoke rising out of there. And there are other videos that come out here in the last hour or so on social media and at news websites. And looking at that, you see it, and I'm just trying to put myself in the position of being a civilian on the ground there, and then all of a sudden watching a hospital nearby being struck by a missile. It's clearly that the Iranian regime, again, wants to do as much damage as they possibly can in the civilian territory, in the civilian parts of Israel, not taking out tactical sites, but going after a hospital where, again, in the heart of a civilian area. That's who Iran is. This is who the enemy is. Now imagine them with a nuclear weapon. And it'll be interesting to see over the next 24 to 36, maybe even 48 hours, how this is all going to play out, as we've heard the president talk about it. And now, it's interesting. I don't know. I started to say there seems to be a consensus in the media. I don't think consensus actually is the word that applies here. But there seems to be less pushback from the media than you would quite often see in a situation like this. It appears, and it's just anecdotal, it's just my take, but it appears over the last 24 hours, the media collectively is looking at this going, all right, Iran is a danger. We know Iran is a danger. They're not in the pro-Israel stance. I'm not saying that, but there appears to be a certainly a tone in the media, again, overall, that this is playing out this way because Iran is not cooperating, because Iran put themselves in this situation.
Well, let's go to this point. Trump has said Iran cannot get a nuclear weapon.
Yeah.
With how insane the left has been.
I know where you're going. Yep. Nope. It's a valid
question.
question.
As I started the show by saying the opinions of the liberals are so predictable here that it's getting to be boring. But you even The View, on The View, you had two of the hosts push back against, Whoopi's insanity. But when you don't have any Democrats saying, or any liberal that I've heard, maybe you had some at the protest in New York City where they were flying the Iranian regime flags yesterday, that thought this, but you haven't seen anyone from the Democratic Party or any major liberal come out and say, well, why can't they have a nuclear weapon if we do?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And you'd say,
that's exactly.
But I understand the response would be back to me. Well, come on, Gary. Nobody would make that insane statement.
Yeah.
This is the party that believes a man can be a woman because the man says so.
Right.
So please understand.
It's the party that's been pro-Hamas.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't they be pro-Iran nuclear weapons?
But you're right. I have not sensed the same setback. What you hear is, yeah, they can't be allowed to do it, but will this drag us into a bigger war? Well, it's like looking at the Fox News poll, the CNN poll, where they're like, and it was funny because X just went crazy on it. It was Harry Enton talking about the fact that, look, it was like only the vast majority of the public, whatever it is, I mean, huge amount of Republicans, they'd like a peaceful negotiated solution to this. So they don't want war.
Yeah.
No. Nobody wants war.
Right.
Nobody, because you don't know what happens when you start it, but the vast majority of the public also believe you can't trust Iran on a deal. So, yes, do I want a negotiated solution? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Are we going to get one? No.
No, we're not. We're not. Israeli Defense Forces put out a video about an hour ago. It's raw footage from an hour ago of the hospital hit in Israel. Iranian regime targets hospitals, and you see the damage done here. It's impossible to look at this if you have any level of compassion as a human and not get emotional about it. It's impossible to look at this and not see exactly what the Iranian regime is all about. They want to terrorize. They are terrorists. They have their proxies do a lot of their heavy lifting up until recently. And if they are to get a nuclear weapon, they will be the world's most unpredictable and one of the greatest dangers, depending on the level of that ability of that weapon and I guess the numbers and how many weapons they could develop. But in watching this video from IDF, and again, it's raw video from in and around that hospital, inside the hospital, some of the footage is from. There is no doubt in my mind as this video plays out the effect that it's going to have. Because you can't look at this and see it for anything else other than what it is. The timeline, everything in the timeline, the Israeli ambassador to the U.S. earlier this week saying when the dust settles Thursday into Friday, it's going to make the pager attack on Hezbollah last fall look simple. And so if it is the timeline here is today into tomorrow, I believe that this video has a greater impact in solidifying and maybe sobering up some of the minds out there that still might have a delusion about who Iran, who the regime is, and what they're capable and willing to do on a regular basis. And I have to believe, as the president assesses whether or not we're going to use the B-2 to take out the Fordo plant in Iran, I think that has to be the consideration, again, of measuring, just simply in the Situation Room, measuring the danger, the risk of Iran to the U.S., not just Israel, and what they would be capable of, because Iran stated just the other day, we have the ability to reach American interests in the Middle East, which, by the way, was already believed. But when they say that, they're warning you that's going to happen. And the president has an obligation to protect Americans in that region, has an obligation to protect American interests in that region. You can talk about going in and fighting Israel's war and everything else. This is also the war of the U.S. Iran, much like Al-Qaeda, after the 9/11 Commission found that, their chief takeaway, that our takeaway from the 9/11 Commission report on 9/11 was they were at war with us, we weren't at war with them. And if you refuse to preemptively attack and eliminate that threat, knowing what the potential of that threat is in reality, then you can expect to see great loss from that threat. If you don't act on it, you will see greater and greater loss until you are willing to act on it.
Just, some context on the whole hospital attack. The Iranian missile hit and caused extensive destruction at the Soroka Medical Center, a major hospital in a southern Israeli city. By the way, just 22 miles from Gaza. This hospital is. Mm-hmm. Soroka is one of Israel's leading medical centers and provides care to more than 1 million people in the south. Wow. According to its website, just 22 miles from Gaza, Soroka is the primary evacuation destination for people wounded in the Gaza war. Israel's Emergency Response Service said it had received a report about a building had sustained heavy damage, that its responders saw extensive destruction on the site. We are currently assessing the damage, including injuries. Video posted to Telegram claiming to show the aftermath around the hospital showed several structures damaged, piles of debris also on the ground. And we also talked about the residential building that was hit earlier. And they say a total of at least 65 injuries between the two. And then the other one that was let me scroll back here, the Iranian ballistic missile that damaged buildings and cars. I'm looking at a photo right now, which is just east of Tel Aviv. The missile struck the location. Mm-hmm. So there have been really 3 areas of attack that have hit into urban civilian areas overnight. Debris from the explosions dangled from the windows of several buildings while falling wreckage damaged cars on the streets below and covered the entire area in shrapnel and dust. Nothing on the casualties there, though, but overall, we've been told 65 people injured. We don't know if there's any deaths. I would be surprised if there was not. One of the things they brought up about the residential section is the fact of if they go to the shelters, they were okay.
Right.
So if the sirens are on, everybody goes to the shelters. You may be doing damage to the building. There may be injuries, but you're much more well protected, as the Israeli government has said, if you're in one of the shelters.
Yeah.
866-98 Red Eye.
This morning's USDA Farm Report is brought to you by House Products. Tested, trusted, guaranteed since 1920.
active weather in the Central Plains earlier this week. And as USDA meteorologist Brad Rippey adds about late Monday, early Tuesday thunderstorms in places like Kansas and Nebraska.
Truly some formidable winds raking the Central Plains, Wichita, at the official airport observation site, coming in with a wind gust of 101 miles per hour early Tuesday morning, and not too far behind Hutchinson, Kansas, at the airport there, coming in at 89 miles per hour.
Such weather raises concerns for Plains winter wheat growers about crop impacts as harvest season gets underway. Rippey says active weather continues to march eastward throughout the week.
Those severe thunderstorms will march their way out of the Plains region and then into the Mid-South and the Midwest. A lot of that will occur as we move into Thursday. And then by Friday, a lot of the remaining thunderstorm activity will reach the east coast of the United States. And at that time, we still could see some severe thunderstorms with that large hail, high winds, isolated tornadoes.
I'm Ron Bain reporting for the U.S. Department of Agriculture in Washington, D.C.
This report brought to you by Cenex Fuels and Lubes.
We'll be right back with more Red Eye Radio with Eric Harley and Gary McNamara.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. You did the same thing that I did, looking at where are the stock market futures? What's going on?
No, it's a holiday today, Juneteenth.
Juneteenth today, so it's
the stock markets, the markets are closed. No trading today.
Well, one of the reasons I wanted to look at it was to see how the response is, because now over the next 2 days is when, it's been implied that this is when something big is going to happen when it comes to the attacks. Now, we know Israel did say that in response to the attacks overnight that they are going to increase.
Yeah.
The intensity is going to increase now.
Oil is at $75.68. Earlier during the show, it was as high as $77 a barrel. So that is, in fact, Brent crude, which is what they produce there in that region, is at 77.08 and is up as well. So that's something that, we can watch even when the markets are closed. That kind of keeps going. And there is going to be that impact on those prices with oil. Again, depending, the market just trying to measure what the disruption in the supply chain might be. And again, everything's going to get back to whatever is decided and whatever actions are taken today. The question is the president really mulling it over? Is he really undecided yet? Or has he decided? And if so, when does he give the green light for U.S. direct involvement, which we believe would be taking out the Fordo site? And we'll see. I mean, it'll happen. I think it will happen either if it's going to happen in the next 24 to 36 hours. I don't think it's going to be any longer than that. So we'll see.
Well, I mean, you get to the point of asking. You would ask and these are the questions I would ask the president. That if you're going to do this, and they're not going to answer you, but I would still ask the question. If you do this, are you ready for any of the contingencies, which is what is the response if we get hit from the Houthis in Yemen? What if there are terrorist attacks in the United States? I mean, you've seen the one where, Iran now may possibly be awakening the sleeper cells in the United States. Well, do they have sleeper cells? Are they organized? Do they have the ability to cause any damage? That's all the questions that you would be asking. But probably the biggest question is, how do you keep U.S. troops from being part of this war? And is that the reason that you're not for the regime change of the Ayatollah? Is the main goal is to really deplete their ability to build any type of nuclear weapon for the next 20 to 30 years. And once you do that, are you done?
Right. Yeah.
Is that the major goal or the one and only goal?
You're listening to Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Interesting story that you were reading me, because the question you have to ask is, did Israel know that the hospital would be targeted?
Well, and, quite unfortunately in Israel, they, I think, learned to predict and anticipate what the enemy is going to do. And I say unfortunately because that's just that's their existence, basically, especially as long as Iran is being Iran. But from the Jerusalem Post, near-miss massacre, how one order saved Soroka's patients under missile fire. Some may call it luck. Others would say it was experience and great crisis management. About 24 hours before ballistic missiles hit Soroka Medical Center in Beersheba on Thursday, Health Ministry Director General, and I hope I'm pronouncing this right, Moshe Bar Simon Tov, made a dramatic decision that essentially saved dozens, if not hundreds, of lives. Quote, clear the surgery floor in the hospital. It's not safe, end quote. The staff did so. Some thought he was exaggerating. On Thursday, they all understood why. At dawn, sirens wailed across the area as Iranian missiles slammed into the now empty third-floor surgical ward. Structural damage was severe, but thanks to his preemptive order, only one patient suffered a minor injury. Dozens of others who would have been in harm's way had already been relocated to safer levels, turning what could have been a catastrophe into a narrow escape. You mentioned the shelters, right? That if you're in the shelter, that you're safe. But, if you're the building may be hit, but if you're in a shelter, you have a greater chance of survival. And I would love to know a lot more than what the Jerusalem Post is, which, by the way, is a great story here. But I have a lot of questions on this. It just, it's fascinating. Again, quite unfortunate that they have to be in this mode, but it is with a great, as they mentioned here, great deal of experience. Just the existing and living in Israel, knowing that the enemy is going to strike, in this case, expecting Iran is going to strike. But I wonder, too, if, in this case, the Health Ministry Director General had intel, if some intel was shared with him, if some thought he was exaggerating, and then, of course, they learn why, then did he have intel that if those missiles came in, that, number one, the hospital was going to be targeted, or number two, if so, that, of course, they would target the surgery floor in the hospital? Or was it just widely believed strategically, listen, if they ever send missiles this way to this hospital, this is what they would look to target? That could be the case, too. But a very interesting story from the Jerusalem Post in development this morning, as Iran has, in fact, some interesting photos coming out from the sky, as Iran has just a barrage of missiles, sent a barrage of missiles into Israel in recent hours, and that hospital, they're being targeted and hit. And again, they're still going through the rubble there in that hospital. And it's anticipated that the U.S. will have a decision soon, if it hasn't already been made, on our direct involvement by President Trump, and also what that means for Israel and what are their plans. They can't deliver the bunker busters. They don't have a B-2 required to deliver the bunker busters. So what will be their role beyond taking out the Fordo plant if that is to happen? And again, we'll be learning that, I believe, in the next 24 to 48 hours.
All right, let's go to let's end today's show with some audio.
Okay.
And the Senate yesterday held a hearing on Joe Biden and his cognitive abilities and what the Democrats knew and what the media knew and what they wouldn't tell the American public. The interesting thing is none of the Democratic senators except Durbin, I guess, who's got to be there because he's the minority leader of the committee. Nobody else was there. Nobody showed up. Now, you and I both said if we put on our political consultant hats and the Democrats asked us, what should we do? We would have told them, don't show up. You can't win this.
Yeah, right.
But here's some of what went on yesterday. Here's, I believe this is John Cornyn with Sean Spicer.
The mechanics were a little bit different. Maybe the timing was not the same, but doesn't that demonstrate the capacity of the leadership of the Democratic Party, of the Biden family, of the senior staff and the president's administration to be able to convince the president that he no longer was capable of serving and needed to step down?
Senator, the left and their friends in the media like to throw around terms like threats to democracy, constitutional crisis. And if we don't have confidence in the leader of the free world making decisions, that truly is the definition of a constitutional crisis and the threat to democracy. So for all of these folks to stand up here and use those phrases over and over again and then not have the desire to show up, to understand what's happening, to stand up at the time, as we discussed earlier, whether it was a staffer or a cabinet member, to literally avoid going to the Oval Office. And in the case of the media, to avoid the questions that were so clearly obvious to the rest of America, shows that they were more concerned with power and preserving that power and an agenda than they were at really caring about the Constitution and democracy.
And I would say to Sean Spicer, duh.
Yeah, exactly.
You also had, for example, I want to get to this. Hang on, I'm just scrolling down through to get there. Here's Josh Hawley yesterday.
Let's just take a look at some of the things that our colleagues said on the Democrat side when their own Justice Department was concluding that Joe Biden, who, let's not forget, illegally took classified documents and kept them in his garage, in his freezer. I mean, Lord knows where. He just certainly didn't know. Their own Justice Department interviewed the guy and concluded he could not form the requisite mental state to stand trial. He did not have the mental ability to stand trial. And what did our Democrat colleagues say? Vice President Harris says, oh, no, the way that the Hur report characterized the president is so wrong. The president's demeanor is totally fine. Senator Smith, what the Hur said about the president not remembering his son's death, so unfair. Senator Kaine said this is grandstanding. Senator Fetterman said it's just cheap shots. You had other senators saying, Senator Ossoff in February of 2024, saying, and I quote, I found the president to be sharp, focused, impressive, formidable, and effective. In June 2024, Congressman Jeffries insists Biden was, and I'm quoting again, incredibly strong, forceful, and decisive. Where are they now? They don't want to answer for any of those quotes now. They lied to us for 4 years, and we know they lied. They know they lied. It's why they're not here. They don't want to answer a single question. They can't bear to show their faces in public. And you know what? It's right that they can't do that because the bill of goods they sold this country, they walked this country right into one of the greatest constitutional crises of our history, And now they are afraid to even show up to admit it. These are people, and this is a party that cannot be trusted with power. That cannot be trusted to tell the truth, the most basic truth. They all changed their tunes after Joe Biden debated President Trump, and the whole world could see he couldn't even form a sentence. That running this guy for president again is a form of elder abuse. My, how they changed their tunes after that. Now they can't even show up in public to talk about it.
Really is amazing.
Yeah.
When you think about it. I mean, it's the advice I would have given them as a political consultant.
Yeah.
Of, look, you can't, you just can't be here. Well, Dick Durbin, had to be there. being the minority leader of the committee.
Mm-hmm.
Here's what he had to say. Okay, let's check out. Let's see what the opposition has to say.
Right, sure.
There wasn't a lot of opposition, but let's hear it from Durbin.
I think we should consider what happened in Alberta, Canada, just this week, where President Trump was at a press conference with British Prime Minister Keir Starmer and said the following: "You all know the great PM of the UK, and we just signed a document." President Trump continued, "We just signed it, so we have our trade agreement with the EU. Britain has not been a party to the EU for 5 years, but President Trump made a statement which clearly was wrong."
So his point is, because Trump mixed up the EU with the UK, it's Trump's cognitive problems that should be the concern of the country right now. Remember, understand, this
seals the deal.
Understand, though, this is Dick Durbin, who compared U.S. military troops back about, how long was this, 20 years ago, 18 years ago? I was on the show when it happened, so it has to be
Yeah, it was 2005, 2006.
20 years ago. Dick Durbin, who compared U.S. troops to the genocidal mass murderer Pol Pot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right.
And at the time, I think I said it, I'm never going to forget this one from Durbin.
Mm-hmm.
And every time I think in the 18, 19 years that after he did it, every single time I bring up Dick Durbin, anytime he's in the news, I always preface it with that.
Yeah.
It's important to understand how far Dick Durbin will go, what lies Dick Durbin would go to, and how the Democrats and independents in Illinois kept putting him back in office over and over and over again.
Yep.
It's good to see him going, but they'll put in somebody worse.
Yeah, it's a lame approach to take one misstep and then apply it as cognitive issues.
I know. Well, it's like how many times have I? Well, probably not. I haven't done it 10 times, but I've done it a couple times over the last couple of days. I've said Israel instead of Iran.
Well, how many times has anyone misplaced their car keys?
Well, yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, we all go through those moments. What happened with Biden is clearly different.
I know. But Durbin tried to make the case. God, it's so poor. I mean, it's just so poor. I would have, now, as a political consultant, I would have said, no, Durbin, shut up.
Well,
don't make that, don't say anything.
Well, here's the difference. Trump had a lot going on at G7. When Biden was at G7, anytime someone said G7, he yelled, bingo!
Did he win anything?
He thinks he did.
Okay. 866-90 Red Eye.
Coming up, more with Gary McNamara and Eric Harley. It's Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. All right, so of course I have to go to the Babylon Bee. I haven't gone there in a couple of days.
Yeah, what do you got?
Some of the illegal immigrants forced to do the rioting that American citizens refuse to do.
Wow.
Oh, my God.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. That's crazy.
Ready for this one?
Go ahead.
After the Supreme Court ruling yesterday, Democrats confused on what exactly children are for if you can't mutilate or kill them.
Oh my gosh, that's
man.
That one is closer to the truth right there.
Yeah, right. Brutal.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that's no joke. That is no joke. It's going to be an interesting day. I really believe, again, this is the timeline everybody's waiting on. Everything seems to point to Thursday and Friday here on possible U.S. involvement directly in attacking Iran. what the president might decide. I don't think we're going to hear. Here's what I'm going to watch for. The president talking less to the media today, because he won't address the country until after it's done. But if there's an operation underway, you won't see him talking to the media. And so if there's that void, and keep in mind, I mean, he's past several days, past several years, he's very active in the media all the time. So
24/7.
Exactly. So if there is that void and he's not active in the media, it tells us he's in the Situation Room. Quite possible.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One.